Imagine time as a vast cosmic ocean. It stretches infinitely into the past and endlessly into the future. To navigate this ocean, we need maps. We need landmarks. For humanity, creating a calendar was one of our first great attempts to chart these waters. We looked to the sky, to the cycles of the sun and the moon, to measure our days and our years. But how do you number the years themselves? How do you organize the grand story of human existence into chapters that everyone can understand? This required a system, a way to count forward and backward from a single significant point in our collective memory. This need for a shared timeline is fundamental to understanding our place in the universe. Without it, history would be a jumble of disconnected events. We couldn't say that the Roman Empire rose before the European Renaissance, or that the first pyramids were built long before the first spacecraft left our planet. We need a reference point, a year zero, to anchor our journey through the centuries. This anchor allows us to build a coherent narrative of our species' progress, our triumphs, and our challenges. It gives us the structure to see the cause and effect that ripple through generations, connecting ancient civilizations to our modern world. Think of it like a ruler. A ruler has a starting point, a zero, from which you can measure in both directions. In the same way, historians needed a starting point for our global calendar. This point allows us to place events in a sequence, creating a timeline that stretches across different cultures and continents. It lets us organize the immense tapestry of human history, from the earliest stone tools to the latest technological marvels. This organization is not just for convenience. It is essential for seeing the big picture, for understanding how we got from there to here on our little world, adrift in the cosmic dark. So we created eras. An era is simply a long period of time, marked from a specific starting event. Different cultures throughout history have had their own eras, often based on the reign of a king or the founding of a city. But as our world became more connected, we needed a more universal system. We needed a common language of time that scholars, scientists, and everyday people could use no matter where they lived. This quest for a shared timeline led to the systems we use today, systems that help us tell the story of us, a story written in the language of years. For many centuries, the Western world used a system centered around one specific historical event, the estimated birth of a man named Jesus Christ. This event became the Great Divide in their calendar. The years before this event were counted backward, and they were called BC, which stands for before Christ. So, if an event happened 100 years before he was born, the date was written as 100 BC. The further back in time you go, the higher the BC number becomes. The year 753 BC, for example, marks the legendary founding of Rome, an event that happened long before our dividing line. On the other side of this divide, the years were counted forward. These years were labelled with AD. Many people think AD means after death, but it actually stands for a Latin phrase Anno Domini. This translates to in the year of the Lord. So, the year the Roman Colosseum was completed, 80 AD, means it happened 80 years in the year of the Lord. The year 2025 AD means we are now 2025 years past that initial starting point. This system, BC and AD, became the standard for many countries and cultures for a very long time. This system provided a powerful tool for organizing history. It created a single, continuous timeline that stretched from the ancient world into the present day. For a historian in Europe hundreds of years ago, it was a perfectly logical system. It was based on the central event of their dominant religion and worldview. Using AD and BC, they could chart the rise and fall of empires, the lives of great thinkers, and the slow march of progress. It was a framework that brought order to the seeming chaos of the past, allowing for a shared understanding of when things happened relative to each other. So let's look at some examples to make it clear. The great philosopher Socrates lived in Athens around 400 BC. That's 400 years before Christ. The Roman Empire fell around the year 476 AD, which is 476 years Anno Domini, or after the start of the era. The timeline flows backward with BC and forward with AD, with the birth of Christ as the pivot point. There is no year zero in this system. The calendar jumps directly from 1 BC to 1 AD. This method of counting became deeply embedded in how we talked about and studied the past for nearly 1,500 years. As our understanding of the cosmos and our own planet grew, so did our society. We became a global community, a tapestry woven from countless different cultures, beliefs, and histories. Scholars and scientists began to look for a way to talk about time that was more inclusive and neutral. They wanted a system that could be used by anyone, anywhere, regardless of their religious or cultural background. This desire for a universal language led to a simple yet profound change in the letters we use to mark our historical timeline. It was a small change in notation, but a giant leap in perspective. This is where CE and BCE come in. They are the modern terms used in history, science, and archaeology. BCE stands for Before the Common Era, CE stands for Common Era. The best part? The numbers don't change at all. The year 100 BC is exactly the same as the year 100 BCE. The year 2025 AD is exactly the same as the year 2025 CE. The dividing line remains the same, the historically estimated birth of Christ. The only thing that changes is the language we use to describe it, moving from a religious framework to a more secular one. The term Common Era acknowledges that this dating system has become the common standard for international communication, trade, and science. It's the system you see on your computer, in international news reports, and in scientific papers. Using CE and BCE removes the explicit religious reference, making the timeline more welcoming to people of all faiths and no faith. It's a way of saying, this is the calendar we have all agreed to use to communicate with each other without imposing one culture's beliefs on the entire world. It is a gesture of intellectual respect and global cooperation. This shift didn't happen overnight. The use of Common Era can be traced back centuries, but it gained widespread acceptance in academic and scientific communities during the late 20th century. Historians in particular adopted it because their work is to study all of humanity. They write about ancient China, the Islamic Golden Age, and the empires of the Americas. Using a neutral term like BCE or CE allows them to discuss these diverse histories on a common timeline without centering the story on a single religious tradition. It makes history a more inclusive field for everyone. Why does this small change in letters matter so much? Because the language we use shapes how we see the world. Using BCE and CE is a way of acknowledging that our planet is home to many cultures, many stories, and many points of view. History is the story of everyone, not just one group. By adopting a more neutral terminology, we create a more inclusive space for learning and discovery. It allows a student in Tokyo, a professor in Cairo, and a researcher in Sao Paulo to all use the same timeline without feeling like outsiders. It helps make history a truly global conversation. Understanding these dating systems is crucial for anyone who wants to explore the past. When you see a date like 3200 BCE, you immediately know you are looking deep into ancient history, long before the Roman Empire even existed. It tells you that this is the era when writing was first emerging in Mesopotamia. When you see a date like 1492 CE, you know it's in the same era we live in now, the era of global exploration. This simple system of BCE and CE acts as a time machine for your mind, allowing you to travel across millennia and understand the sequence of events that shaped our world. Think of it this way. The stars look the same whether you call them by their Greek, Arabic, or Chinese names. The underlying reality of the cosmos doesn't change. In the same way, the timeline of human history is what it is. The events happened when they happened. The systems of BC, AD, and BCE, CE are just different names we give to the same ruler of time. Knowing both sets of terms is important because you will encounter both in books, museums, and documentaries. Understanding that they refer to the exact same dates prevents confusion and deepens your appreciation of the historical record. Ultimately, these systems are tools. They are human inventions designed to help us grasp the immense scale of time. They allow us to see the connections between the agricultural revolution and the digital age, between the first cities and our sprawling metropolises. They give us a framework to ask big questions about where we came from and where we might be going. By understanding how we measure our shared past, we are better equipped to navigate our shared future together as inhabitants of this one small world, making our own history in the vastness of the common era.